What's up, fight fans? Welcome to the SB Nation MMA UFC on Fox 31 or hashtag UFC Milwaukee post-fight show. My name's Flying Brian J. Thank you so very much for joining me. With me once again is the Zane Simon from the 6-Round Post-Fight Show, editor at BloodyElbow.com. Zane, what'd you think of the final show on Fox for the UFC?
I mean, as is always the case with shows like this, where you got a lot of, some inexperienced talent, some stuff like that. It all kind of hinges on the main card, especially the main event, how that went down. And at that point, I got to say UFC on Fox was a fun time. It was really an uneven show. It had some fights on it that were a mix of thrilling and terrible. Zach Otto, Dwight Grant, not at all fun. Zach Cummings, Trevor Smith, not at all fun. Danny Ye, Jordan Griffin, Like, you got some really dud fights in there. Even Rob Font, Sergio Pettis was not a barn burner. But Iaquinta Lee was fascinating. I mean, seeing Lee still struggle that much in the intermediary distances of striking, seeing it go in like 2-2 right down to the wire. And Iaquinta pick it up in the 4th and 5th rounds to win that fight. I think that it made for a really edgier seat what's going to happen bout. Edson Barboza, Dan Hooker was, I realized maybe I shouldn't glorify violence, but it was still fucking awesome. And watching Charles Oliveira just totally own Jim Miller. Sad day for Jim Miller fans, but still a cool performance. So out of that mix, any kind of card like this, you always kind of got to judge by what the biggest fights do, and the biggest fights delivered.
They delivered handily, too. Really, really fun fights to cap off the card. Perhaps the best thing, Zane, is that sometimes we're trying to rush through this post-fight show so we can get to the 6th round because it's getting late. But my time, it's only 9:43. We would only be on the second fight of an ordinary main card, so you got to love the UFC on Fox events for that.
It is 7:45 where I am.
That's fucking awesome.
I wish it was even earlier. It could have all ended by I think it started at I want to say 5 my time, so it could have, should have, would have ended by 7, but 7:45, I can always handle that. That's not a bad thing for me at all, and I wish every card worked like this for me in my time zone.
Absolutely, yeah, all of them. If it could start middle of the afternoon, probably started about noon for you. No, 1 o'clock. The early prelim started 1 p.m. for you.
Yep.
That's pretty fantastic. I wish it was always like this. Like, other sporting events aren't getting over at 1 a.m. Eastern time. So if we
I went out for breakfast today. I took a friend to the airport, and that was me getting up at 9, going to breakfast at 10, driving to the airport all the way down and back from 11:30. I got back at 12:55, right in time for this card to start. That would be ideal every time.
Absolutely. We got a lot of commenters here that are talking about the main event where Raging Al Iaquinta defeated Kevin Lee for the second time via decision. I think both times were unanimous decisions, or at least both times were at the judges. And a lot of the commenters are questioning if it was a robbery, and they're thinking that Kevin Lee won. I thought that it could have got, there was one.
A lot of the commenters are jerking themselves the fuck off, if that's what they're saying, honestly. I mean, I'm sorry, y'all, but Iaquinta clearly won 3 rounds of that fight, and Kevin Lee questionably, closely won 2, where he hit takedowns and got some control and did some, threatened with some chokes and stuff like that. The problem for Lee was that he was hanging on the feet, which was the big thing that I thought would win him this fight, was being competitive on the feet. But he didn't get to the grappling exchanges nearly enough or do nearly enough damage there when he did to be oh, Kevin Lee fucking had this.
Yeah, he didn't even try to start wrestling until the 2nd round, which I thought was kind of crazy. He's known for his rear naked choke, his control on the ground. He didn't even try to put it there until the 2nd stanza. And in the 1st round, he was getting hurt by the right hand of Iaquinta.
Yeah, no, I mean, Iaquinta was always going to be the better pocket boxer than Kevin Lee. That was always going to be the thing. The question was, could Lee keep him out at range, pump the jab, stay long, and then dive in, crash the pocket to get those takedowns? And he just didn't do it often enough. He just wasn't comfortable with it often enough to make it something that you're Lee really just solidified close rounds. it was much more like Iaquinta's landing hard right hands, and at that point, I got to score close rounds for him.
Yeah, uh, Raging Al was doing the damage, and that's the number one criteria. He was the one that was hurting Lee in the first, second, and fifth round, and especially in the fifth round. I mean, he dominated Kevin Lee in that fifth round, and maybe the most important thing in the entire fight was Iaquinta with that takedown defense midway through the final round. I think that right there, and he was winning in my mind before that, but then keeping it on the feet at that point in the fight was absolutely incredible. It was necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough setback for Kevin Lee, but it's also just a show. It just showed that his striking hasn't evolved nearly as much as he'd like to think it has. He's still, when he's on the outside, he's still a really clunky, basics kind of fundamental striker. Where it's like, yeah, you got a jab, you got a high kick, you got a hook, but you don't know how to string them together into competent combinations. And when you throw combinations, you can't stay on balance, really being aware of what's coming back at you from your opponent. And Iaquinta was able to take advantage of that. He's much more able to square up and throw series of punches that where he can see what's coming back at him, and Lee just didn't know how to handle that.
And beyond that, the commentators, Daniel Cormier, Paul Felder, they do a phenomenal job. I love listening to both of those guys, but they were applauding Kevin Lee's chin because he didn't get knocked out by some of the shots that were landing, but just him not being able to take the shots and just kind of move forward or keep the momentum on his side. Every time he got hit hard, the momentum would shift to Al's side, and that right there is a really bad thing for Kevin Lee to have happen over and over and over.
It's notable that in their first fight, actually, Lee was the one who pushed forward most of that fight. He had the forward momentum and the pressure most of that fight, and that was what kept it close. It let him keep Iaquinta on his back foot, let Lee get in on takedowns, let Lee do really well in grappling exchanges. And in this fight, Iaquinta had almost all the pressure. And if you're not able to push your opponent back, if you're forcing, Kevin Lee's just not a deft enough striker to fight off his back foot for 45 minutes, or 25 minutes rather, not 45, but 25 minutes. There's nothing about his game that's just like, oh, Kevin Lee, top shelf counter puncher. It doesn't, he's competent in striking exchanges, but not excellent. And being on your back foot, he was uncomfortable there all fight. And it does say something that dynamic shifted between their first and second fight.
Let's talk about what's next for Raging Al. In the post-fight interview, he kind of called out Conor McGregor. He just basically said that Conor shouldn't get an immediate rematch with Nurmagomedov because Raging Al lasted longer with Nurmagomedov than McGregor did. I don't think that the fight between Iaquinta and McGregor would ever happen. Iaquinta's not a big enough name, although I would watch it. What do you think's next for Raging Al? I think that the easy matchmaking would be Barboza.
Yeah, actually, I mean, that would be the really, simple, straightforward matchmaking. Looking at the rest of the division, obviously there's Gagey is out there hanging around, and Dustin Poirier too. I mean, the thing is that Gagey, Poirier, Ferguson, we don't really know what Khabib is doing next, and Iaquinta hasn't fought any of these people. So, off a win like this, he's got all sorts of options that are just ahead of a title fight that the UFC almost certainly isn't all that interested in giving him.
Yeah.
Go ahead. That's kind of the problem for Iaquinta, is that this win comes right off a loss that told the UFC we shouldn't overinvest in Iaquinta as our next top title contender. So the idea that he's going to jump the line or something like that, it just doesn't seem likely. He's probably going to have to fight one or two of these top contenders that are floating around out there before he gets to a title shot, just because the chances are Khabib is either going to fight, he's going to fight somebody like Max Holloway or George St. Pierre or Conor McGregor again. And I know that the rematch may seem unfair, but that's just the way the matchmaking works now. It's not about you've earned your way back to the spot, so you get it. It's just does anybody care about this fight? Did anybody watch Iaquinta Khabib 1 and want to see a rematch? If they didn't, then that rematch isn't happening.
Right, and for Iaquinta, in terms of getting big matchups, he often just disappears for a long time and goes and just he's a realtor or whatever the hell he's doing. So you're like, it is hard to just give him these high profile fights, even though they just gave him a pretty high profile one, the last ever fight on regular Fox. He went off, with a pretty big win as a hefty underdog. Maybe they'd want to do something with him, but maybe he doesn't want them to do something with him. Who knows? Weird dynamic between Iaquinta and the UFC. So in the co-main event where I mentioned Barboza could be the next guy to fight Raging Al, he styled all over Dan the Hangman Hooker so bad that I thought the fight could have been stopped between the second and third round. And the doctor even got in there and asked him if he wanted to continue, and Hooker said, yes, I want to keep going. And then the doctor asked him what year it was, and he said 2019. That was grounds to stop it right there. Even further than he just got his ass whooped really, really bad in the second round. What'd you think of the fight actually going into the third round and Barboza's performance overall?
I mean, asking MMA corners, MMA doctors, anybody other than the fighter landing the knockout blow to stop a fight early is always a fool's errand in MMA. We all know that. Like, we know that that's not going to be what we get out of these things. So, it sucks, but at the same time, I'm sure Hooker won't be mad about it. I'm sure Barboza won't be mad about it. And we all just kind of have to live with it, that's just the reality where the sport is right now. Otherwise, I mean, I thought Hooker could find find pressure in ways that Barboza has been pressured before by so many other opponents that have caused Barboza to shut down and make bad decisions, gas out, do all the sorts of things that have caused him to lose fights. But he really let Barboza get comfortable in open space. And man, if you let Barboza get comfortable in open space in the cage, you fucked yourself. I mean, I don't know what part of the game plan trade low kicks early with Edson Barboza was.
Yeah.
But that was not a good game plan. And Hooker paid for it really badly by the time that, the third and fourth rounds were coming.
You mentioned a lot of things were going on in this fight card. It had a little bit of everything. Got over early. One of the themes throughout this entire card was poor fight IQ. There was multiple times where Gerald Mearshart, what the fuck was he doing? Who else?
Charles Oliveira. Jim Miller. We got the Zach Otto Dwight Grant fight was terrible. I don't know.
There were multiple times in the fight where there was really, really bad fight IQ shown and highlighted in the low kicking game attempted by Dan the Hangman Hooker in the co-main event.
Yeah. I will say second and third round. I said third and fourth, I think. I forgot that wasn't a fight. It felt like the beating was so prolonged. I think I actually mentally went through a time warp and was like, this must have lasted forever. This lasted my entire life. I think, I have flashbacks to when I was 5 years old watching Dan Hooker eat low kicks from Edson Barboza. So.
And 6 spinning back kicks to the body where 3 of them he hunched over and was like, oh, I'm kind of done here. But then he's like, okay.
I feel bad for Hooker because I can damn well guarantee you that he's going to be pissing blood for all the rest of this week. Until next Saturday, his pee will be bright red. And that's a terrible thing.
It's awful. And he was hunched over on the ground like a tenderized piece of meat for a really, really fucking long time after that stoppage. My word. But in essence, Dan Hooker had been asking for a step up in competition. He wanted a top 5 guy for a really long time. Got it. Didn't quite get there. I would like to see the losers face each other from the co-main and main, and then the winners face each other. I think that's easy matchmaking. Just let's go with that.
It's lazy matchmaking. So as the person who always writes up the fights to make editorial, in my heart of hearts, I hate it. But at the same time, Hooker Lee, Barboza, Iaquinta, I mean, they would both be fun fights. So I'm not out there entirely against it.
Well, we're talking about the most stacked division in all of mixed martial arts. So the top 15, just run them back to back. Any one of these matchups is going to be a lot of fun.
I would say if Hernandez beats Cerrone in their coming fight, Hernandez versus like either Hooker or Lee would be totally fascinating in a fight. I'd be happy to see, like, just to see him continue to get thrown in the deep end as long as he keeps overreaching and over exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
It all sounds really, really good. I'll let you get out of here so I don't hold you this whole time. I know it's early, but I got to let you do your thing. Let's talk about a WTF of the card. There were a couple of questionable decisions on the card. There was, like I said, Dan Hooker going out for the third round. I didn't think he should have gone out to the third round. What do you think was kind of a what the fuck moment? Or if you want to spin it into a positive way, who do you think the shining star of this fight card was?
I mean, honestly, nobody comes out of this fight card better than Iaquinta. Because he's coming off a title fight that it made a lot of people question Khabib, whether it's good, whether it's for reasonable reasons or not. I mean, Khabib totally dominated Iaquinta, but it was in such a weird way that it made people question him. So Iaquinta getting another big win really does wonders for him here. Barboza obviously bouncing back off 2 hard losses. That's great for him. If you really want a WTF of the card, I would say it's probably the Druckart close Bobby Green decision. Bobby Green seemed like he cleanly won the first 2 rounds of that fight, to my mind, and to almost everyone else I saw's mind. And Close got got a unanimous decision over him, 29-28. All judges gave him the first round off a few leg kicks. Let me just, if I check fight metric, I'll be interested. I'm gonna be interested to see whether I eat my words coming up here. Because
for the first round,
Bobby Green, Druckart Close, round 1,
24-15.
Yeah, Green outlanded Close 30-18 in the first round, and 32-22 in significant strikes, and Green had the only sub attempt, or 32-22 in regular strikes, 30-18 in significant, and Green had the only sub attempt, and then he outlanded Close 38-13 in round 2, and 22-7 in significant strikes. Like, we know Green won the second round unequivocally, and to score round 1 for Close off leg kicks when he only landed 18 strikes to 30, like, you're almost getting outlanded 2-1, and every judge gave him round 1. I can't see it. I don't know what the fuck anyone was thinking on that, and it goes to my feeling that in consistent stand-up exchanges where most of the fight is dominated by back and forth striking, a lot of judges just don't know what the fuck they're seeing.
Yeah, and the referee, I could give a what the fuck to that same fight. Close cheated like 3 times in the first round, and the referee did nothing. And the commentators kept talking about no nonsense Keith Peterson, but also no point deduction Keith Peterson. Close grabbed Green's glove for like 30 seconds at the very beginning. Yep. Then he locked his toes into the cage to reverse position when he was in mount, for God's sakes. And then he hit fucking Green low all in the first round. I don't get it. How you don't take a point, or at least give him a stern warning that says you do something again, you get a point taken away.
MMA is the sport of guidelines, not rules. We really like to think we've gotten beyond the whole no holds barred era, but honestly, like, if there's almost never point deduction, so how do you really have rules if they're never actually enforced?
And this is one of them where they really should have been. Fuck.
Yeah.
What the fuck, Keith Peterson?
I'm close to win, though, so for me as an analyst, I feel really smart. So I'll say that.
Nice, yes. If you haven't already, fight fans, you got to subscribe to the Bloody Elbow Presents podcast feed and listen to the MMA Vivisection every week. I still listen every time, Zane. It's helps me get through my workday. But my WTF of the card is going to Gerald Meerschaert. He was mounted 4 times by Jack Hermanson in the first round. The fight didn't get out of the first stanza, but he was mounted 4 times and still tried to just go right back in for a grappling exchange after getting up from mount the 4th time. and then got finished with a guillotine choke. What the fuck? Gerald Meerschaert. That was some of the lowest fight IQ I've ever seen. Also, what the fuck? What do you think the record for mounting your opponent in one round is? How many times?
Yeah, I have no idea. I couldn't even begin to guess. If it's not on Wikipedia, I basically don't know it.
I'm going to say it's 4 with Hermanson over Meerschaert at UFC on Fox 31.
I'll keep you to that, and if it's wrong, I'll mock you relentlessly in the future.
That's fine. I'll retweet your mocking because that's the kind of thing that I do. Anyway, thanks for being here, Zane. Tell the people where they can find you and all of that jazz.
Yeah, of course, you can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon, over on Twitter. I said that already. Whatever. Don't question me. I'm over at BloodyElbow.com day to day as well. You can find me on the MMA Vivisection. Drops every Thursday, usually at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern for the prelims. We do the main card drops at 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific for the main card Vivi. And then we have the 6th round, which drops every Sunday. Bloody Elbow Presents, which I'm going to run off and record in just a minute here. So find me on Twitter. Find me on Bloody Elbow. Bloody Elbow Presents. Like, subscribe, SB Nation, and our MMANation.com YouTube channel where this show, I believe, can be found. So thanks, everyone, and I will see you all later.
Thanks a lot for being here, Zane. Take it easy, buddy. Okay, so for the rest of the show, it's just going to be me and you guys. So we're going to talk about the rest of the fights that we didn't go over past the main and co-main event. I'm going to need your comments as we move forward. Plus, I'm going to need your likes and subscribes to this channel. Torn Brown just says Iaquinta. Mugen Man 1 says, who won, though? The main event, Al Iaquinta won via unanimous decision, 48-47, 48-47, and 49-46. I scored it 3-2, but I could have seen how you would have given Raging Al the 4th round because he was clearly winning on the feet, and then Raging Al got taken down by Kevin the Motown Phenom Lee, but Kevin didn't do a whole lot with it, and throughout the entirety of the fight, whenever the fight would go to the ground, basically in the third and 4th round, Iaquinta did a good job getting his hands up in the air to fight off the rear naked choke attempts from Kevin Lee. That was really good work by Al Iaquinta, and also in the 5th round, like I mentioned, that takedown defense, getting an arm between Lee's crotch and trying to switch out and then take the back was pretty damn awesome as well. Rob Amon's here with his hedge trimmers, which means he's going to cut some people from the octagon or from the UFC roster. All right, Rob, let's start with that. Who on this entire night of fights do you think should be cut from the roster? Well, we talked about Charles Dubronx Oliveira extending his record for submission victories in the UFC to 12 with a first-round rear naked choke over Jim Miller at 1:15 of the very first round. Incredibly impressive performance by Charles Oliveira. Jim kind of initiated the clinch. Oliveira got the body lock, picked him up, put him on the ground, got the rear naked choke shortly thereafter. But Miller, as I'm talking about Rob Amon's hedge trimmers, he was on a 4-fight losing streak dating back to February of 2017. Dustin Poirier, Anthony Pettis, Francisco Trinaldo, Dan Hooker. Then he got a rear naked choke submission over Alex White in September. Now he lost to Charles Oliveira. So he is 1-6 or 1-5 in his last 6 fights. If Jim Miller doesn't retire, I think that he needs to be cut from the UFC roster. I apologize for saying that. I like Jim Miller a lot. I put him in my top 3 fights to watch on this card because he has the most appearances in UFC history at 31. He has the most finishes in lightweight history. No, he has the most wins in lightweight history at 17, and yada yada. Acid Melted Brain says you can't just hold somebody and expect to win. Jack Hucknall says the crowd booing Kevin post-fight was music to my ears. I'm not a fan of Kevin Lee either. I don't like his brand of bravado and the way that he talks trash. I don't like it. He's a very dominant grappler ordinarily, in the cage on the ground, but I'm not a huge fan of him. Let's keep talking about Rob Amon's hedge trimmers. In the first fight of the night, second fight of the night, heavyweight fight between Mike Rodriguez and Adam Milstead. Mike Rodriguez finished Milstead via TKO, knee to the body, and punches at 2:59 of the first round. Milstead, I want to mention real quick that on Twitter not long ago he said on that he is one of the rare fighters who still has a full-time job. He looks like he's working on a pipeline or something. He had a hard hat on, and so he says he's working a full-time job. He's now on a 3-fight losing streak after he beat Chris De La Rocha back in May of 2016. He lost to Curtis Blades, Jordan Johnson, and then Mike Rodriguez. Rob's saying that he needs to be cut. He's not going to get cut because after losing to Mike Rodriguez in this fight, he left his gloves inside the octagon. So he has retired from mixed martial arts competition. He goes out while still in the UFC, I think, kind of feeling the possibility of getting cut from the roster. So he goes out as a UFC fighter and will probably go back to his day job. I kind of feel bad for him getting his ass whooped in this fight tonight, but yeah, I don't think we're cutting him either. So 2 people that we might want to cut from the roster are just going to call it a day. WWITIM, or World War I Tim, says, did we talk about Jared Flash Gordon getting pieced up by Silva yet? No, we did not. Let's just head on down there. So midway through the fight card, Joaquim Silva knocked out Jared Flash Gordon in the 3rd round. At the very end of the 2nd round, Silva had Gordon's back, and Gordon was defending well, but then Silva went for that knee bar submission victory like Magomed Sharipov got, and also Funkmaster Aljamain Sterling got on a fight card not too long ago. And he hurt his knee. So Silva fucking busted up Jared Gordon's knee. So then in the 3rd round, when they came out, Gordon had been landing a really hard right hand on Silva and getting the better of the striking exchanges. Overhand right, also the short left hook was getting the better of Silva. But in that 3rd round, because he had a busted up knee, Jared Gordon could no longer move laterally or get in with his strikes and then get out so that he could evade the attack of Joaquim Silva. And then Silva just kind of poured it on him and finished him up against the fence. And it was a really good stoppage by the referee there. Joaquim Silva was pouring it on, and you kind of saw Gordon's eyes go away from him, and then he slumped over while still standing on his feet. I think he was out on his feet just sleeping, and the referee stepped in and called it over. That was an incredible performance by Joaquim Silva, especially considering that in the very first round, Jared Gordon nearly finished him with that overhand right and punches in the first round. He hurt him on the feet, and then I think this might have been one of the times where I was talking about the fight IQ being lacking, because Gordon hurt him on the feet but then went in for a takedown attempt, and he shouldn't have done that. And what was interesting in that fight, beyond just the back and forth action, the violence that was inside of the cage, it was fun to hear Paul Felder's commentary on it, because he said that Jared Gordon is one of his good friends. So even though the commentary was definitely biased toward Jared Gordon, it was just fun to hear the emotion in Paul Felder's voice while calling it, kind of willing Jared Gordon to the victory. And Daniel Cormier balanced out the level of bias by calling a lot of the good things that Silva was doing. And ultimately, I think that Paul Felder was able to reel in his favoritism a little bit and just give us an extra emotional call in that fight. So good things all around in that fight. Jared Gordon looked good with his striking. I was surprised by that. Silva looked durable by surviving past the first 2 rounds, and then an amazing comeback. That fight had everything that you could possibly want to see in a fight. Tommy says Raging Al Iaquinta's submission defense was awesome in the main event. It absolutely was. Turd Nug says Al versus McGregor would be a snoozer on the lead up. Jack Hucknall says that was fight of the night. Are you talking Joaquim Silva versus Jared Gordon was fight of the night? I absolutely hope it was, because Jared Gordon, you might not know his story. He's a former drug addict, and he said he almost overdosed and died once, and he's come back and had a lot of success in mixed martial arts, and it's kind of what keeps him on the straight and narrow. For him to get a little bit of extra money in his UFC career would make me feel pretty good. Digital Rocker says Lee won by submission. That's absolutely not true. Rage and Al won via unanimous decision. Torrin Brown, I think if Lee really wants to improve his boxing, he needs to go over to Denver and train with Ludwig if he wants to stand up to improve. Ashley Dawson, how about Mir tapping to strikes yesterday? I didn't see that. Rob Font won't get much of a step up, says Rob Amon. So let's go back to the main card portion where Rob Font defeated Sergio the Lil Phenom Pettis 30-27 across the board. This was just a one-sided, not a beatdown, but a one-sided point affair. Rob Font basically pumped that jab out there on the shorter, smaller fighter in Sergio Pettis. Occasionally got in on some takedowns, a little bit of ground and pound from the standing position even. He's got so much length on him that he could get to Pettis' face from the standing position when Pettis had his back on the canvas. Basically what this fight said to me was that Sergio Pettis needs to stay at 125 pounds. If the UFC does not get rid of the flyweight division, Sergio Pettis needs to go back to 125. He looked way undersized to Rob Font tonight. And he had less power too. Even though Sergio Pettis is a sniper, he's got very good accuracy with his punches. Being shorter hindered that. And then I think he has one knockdown in the UFC. He averages 0.08 knockdowns per 15-minute fight. And also, Sergio Pettis averages 15 minutes and 6 seconds per time in the octagon. That's not good. So the firepower coming back on Rob Font from Pettis, it wasn't really threatening, and Rob Font could basically do whatever he wanted. Who would be next for Rob Font? I don't know, an actual bantamweight. So I agree with Rob's assessment. Lee McEwen says, told everybody that Raging Al is a stud. World War I Tim says, Kevin needs to move up in weight. And I know that it's not official yet, and Dana White always says it's not happening, but the 165-pound division, if that were to happen, I think it would benefit Kevin Lee to be there. I think that Lee might be too small for welterweight, but I think his weight cut, I'm not sure if it is his weight cut, but he seems chinny. He seems a little bit fragile. Maybe bumping up a weight class would benefit him there. I think his strength and his power would carry with him if he went up a weight class, but he just seems really fragile for this lightweight division. Dave Kula says, any interest in Ed Ruth? The Naaman Gracie fight should be on shortly. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I was going to cut this post-fight show short because right now on UFC Fight Pass, we've got an Invicta fight card going on. Also, I don't know what number of Bellator event it is, but the second night of Bellator fights in a row are happening. Lyoto the Dragon Machida's fighting really, really soon. So I'm probably going to kick it out of here and go over and watch that fight card. Thanks for reminding me, Dave Kula. BJJ Subartist says, amazing how many people overlook and underestimate Al Iaquinta. Al's extremely talented. He really, really is. Al's defensive grappling in both the Nurmagomedov fight where he took on very short notice and tonight, his defensive grappling was outstanding. Of course, he's got a BJJ wizard in the short ball man that is Matt Serra. So he's got some great coaches, a great team around him. And he looked phenomenal tonight. Lee got hit by some big bombs from Al Iaquinta, but it wasn't the big bombs of Al's that I was most impressed with. It was the defensive grappling. Let's run over some other results quick. Zach Otto defeated Dwight Grant in the least exciting fight of the night, split decision. Drakkar Klose, we mentioned that. Bobby Green, it was kind of a bullshit decision. Joaquim Silva, Jared Gordon got that. Gerald Mearshart, being really, really stupid, guillotine choke loss to Jack Hermanson. We mentioned that. Zach Cummins versus Trevor Smith. It was the left hand of Zach Cummins that hurt Trevor Smith a few times that got Zach Cummins that victory. Dan Ige versus Jordan Griffin. I'm going to be honest, guys. I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2 online during that fight, so I didn't really pay attention to it. Shh, don't tell my bosses. Mike Rodriguez knocking out Adam Milstead. It was a knee to the liver that crumpled Adam Milstead over, and I got a solid picture of it on the MMA Mania Instagram. So go to Instagram.com/MMA-mania.com with the dot spelled out DOT. In the first fight of the night, Juan Adams, I put a max bet down on Juan Adams to beat Chris De La Rocha. Basically, Juan Adams got tired sometimes, but whatever he threw at De La Rocha was landing. And he got the TKO at 58 seconds of round number 3. It looked like this was another fight where it could have been stopped between the second and third round. Whatever. Juan Adams looked really impressive in his UFC debut after looking incredibly impressive on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. This was the first time Juan Adams had been out of the first round. Rob Amon says he'd like to see Anthony Pettis versus Kevin Lee. Sounds good. Carlos Cervantes, how was Lee versus Iaquinta? Was it a good decision or shitty judging? I thought it was a fantastic decision. Digital Rocker, a lot of people are saying the wrong result. I'm probably going to block them if they keep doing it. Yeah, Raging Al beat Kevin Lee via unanimous decision. I thought it was the right call. 3-2 was what I scored it. I think that's what it needed to be. Iaquinta in round 1 and 2 and 5. 1, 2, and 5. Raging Al was hurting Kevin Lee quite a few times. Commenters, my friends, let's talk about who deserves post-fight bonuses. Who's getting an extra $50,000 out of your wallet? But because we're actually not giving anybody any money at all, we can go with 5. So we're going to give out $250,000, a fight of the night and 3 performances or 5 performance bonuses. Fight of the night is either going to Silva versus Jared Gordon or to the main event, Iaquinta versus Kevin Lee. I think the most fun I had watching a fight tonight was the main event, so I'm going to give them, Iaquinta and Lee, each an extra $50,000. Edson Barboza styled to the maximum on Dan Hooker. Spinning back kick to the body a couple of times, spinning wheel kick to the head, fucking ripping hooks to the body. I nailed him with a ton of leg kicks that just fucked up Dan Hooker's leg. I think that Edson Barboza deserves an extra 50. Charles Oliveira extending his submission record to 12, extra $50,000. And then Jack Hermanson. I think if you mount somebody 4 times in the first round, in 1 round alone, and then get the submission victory, rear guillotine choke, you're gonna get an extra $50,000 to me. Let me quickly check the real results as I look at your guys' picks for post-fight bonuses. All right, Marcus McGahee says Lee Iaquinta, fight of the night, Barboza, Dobronx, and Hermanson. He agrees with me exactly for the post-fight bonuses. All right. Catherine Whitbeck, holy shit, Al won. Damn, sorry, I put the wrong result. I just read what someone else said. Sorry. No problem, Catherine. You're good. Ashley Dawson says Barboza Hooker, fight of the night? I don't know. I don't know about that. BJJ Subartist says Barboza. I think we can all agree that Barboza deserves an extra $50,000 tonight. Carlos Cervantes, thanks, good to know. I missed the fight, unfortunately, as I had to take my buddy to her stripper job. Okay. Well, there it is. All right, the official ones. Okay, and I'm happy that this happened. Like I said, I want Jared Flash Gordon to get more money because I like his story. So, fight of the night was Jared Flash Gordon versus Joaquim Neto BJJ Silva. Performance bonuses went to Al Iaquinta. Okay, that's fine. I like that. And Charles Dobronx Oliveira. Fantastic. So I think that will do it for the show. Follow me over on Twitter at FlyandBrianJ, where I'm going to be tweeting out during this Invicta card and also Bellator if I can find a way to watch it. Thanks for being here, my friends. Please give the video a thumbs up. I know that my post-fight shows here on SB Nation MMA have been getting a lot of thumbs down. I'm the new guy. I have a different way of doing things. I'm not the most well-spoken person in the world, but if you appreciate the content and like hanging out with me, it is imperative that you give the video a thumbs up so the bosses will keep me in this position and maybe keep me around. I really enjoy doing this. I'd like to keep doing it. One way you can help me do that is by giving the video a thumbs up. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks for a live during the pay-per-view portion of UFC 232, which is headlined by Johnny Bones Jones returning to fight Alexander the Mauler Gustafsson. And in the co-main event, we've got a super fight, Chris Cyborg Justino versus Amanda the Lioness Nunes. I'll be doing a live during the card and also a post-fight show just like this. I'll see you guys then. Namaste. Thanks, BJJ Subartist. Thanks, Dave.